The year is 1957, and our scientists and engineers are hard at work, fresh on the heels of 2 successful programs, and have created this magnificent rocket to learn what we can about animals in space. Presenting to you, the Thunderbolt 2. Designed for the Atomic Space Agency, the Thunderbolt 2 represents the peak of 1950s technology. Don't tell the administration, but we stole it from the future. This sounding rocket represents our next leap forward in spaceflight. Lifting a payload consisting of 2 lovable animals destined for space, the Thunderbolt 2 is a pure solid rocket fuel craft, powered by 2 Castor 1s and a cluster of baby sergeants, lifting these creatures to heights never before seen. With a price tag of just under $1,500, you'd have to be a fool not to pick up one of these for your space agency, rocket club, or to simply show those pesky Joneses a thing or two about what it means to be successful. The Thunderbolt 2 will only be available for a limited time for between the months of October and December of 1957, so get yours today because these babies are just flying off the shelf.
Hello everybody and welcome back to RP-1. Today we are just going to be focusing on the launches. We're not going to be doing any building in this episode. That's why I provided the blueprints before, so if you'd like to go back and see how the rocket was put together, feel free to do that. But in this episode we're going to focus solely on the launches. So as you see here, I had 2 of these Thunderbolts ready to go, and that is because between the last episode, or movie I should say, the last movie, and this episode, we created 2 launch complexes. So we could start firing off Thunderbolt 2s more rapidly than if we had only the 1 complex. So we're going to launch 4 rockets today. I'm not going to be saying too much. I'm probably just going to come in here and there to kind of narrate if anything specific happens that I want to point out. But for the most part, we're just going to hang out and watch some launches. So I hope that's what you're into. These Castor 1s are some pretty heavy-duty solid rocket boosters. They're from the 1958 solid rocket boosters technology that we had aggressively put our science points into SRB technology. So this is kind of our peak performer at the moment. And these 4 rockets were solely so we could pick up some extra science in between the completion of the previous 2 programs and the next program of going orbital. So these are basically just sounding rockets, but a little more advanced. So yeah, the 2 Thunderbolts only get us past the Kármán line, and not too much farther than that. So that's why we have this cluster of baby sergeants, an 11 SRB setup that pushes up as high as we need to go. There you go. We have the advanced biological capsule as well as the standard biological capsule on here. So we're going to be getting both of that science plus the mass spectrometer science. So as you see here, we've got everything running. And we're just going to let this cruise to its apoapsis and fall back down. Excuse me, the apogee, because we are in real solar system above Earth. So we keep everything tucked away into the payload fairing so that way it doesn't blow up on re-entry, because it is a fairly steep re-entry. And this was kind of funny. It only happened this one time, but our payload fairing decided it did not want to let go, and so we brought that down with us. So we're just going to watch this as it goes down to the ground. How is everybody? How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for clicking on this video. Thank you for watching and keeping up with the series. We are going to be doing some pretty fun things here pretty soon. We're going to not only be working on going orbital, but we might pick up a new program as well in the interim. So there you go, the parachute's fully deployed, and so now it is coming down at a safe speed. We can feel pretty confident in this launch. So let's recover our vessel and go back to the KSC. As we see here, we got a pretty good chunk of science out of that. It was our first time using the advanced biological capsule outside of the 1 program that we required us to use it. So we have quite a bit of science, 21 0.5 points of science. So let's go here ahead and check out what we want to unlock. First things first, I definitely want to grab the orbital rocketry node, because we are desperately going to need those engines to go orbital. We can achieve it with what we have. It is possible, but I'm not looking to challenge myself in such a way to do that. I think I would rather just go with the engines designed for orbiting. So we also went and picked up satellite era technology that will provide us with some solar panels, and those solar panels are part of one of the contracts to put up a solar satellite. So here we go. We just time warp to the completion of the second Thunderbolt 2, ABE, standing for Advanced Biological Experiment. So let's go ahead and launch that. This whole episode takes place between the months of October and December of 1957. So just to give you an idea of the pace that we're pushing these out at. So go ahead and launch, and I forget to do my little cinematic view, and I also forget to grab all the windows that I'd like to have open at the time. So here you can see me shoving myself through the rocket trying to click on the appropriate parts, but eventually I get it, and we can just continue to watch our launch. I don't know if you noticed in the previous launch, we ended up tilting off to the south that time, I believe. This one, we're tilting off to the east, southeast a little bit, and I'm not entirely sure why. I stabilized this rocket. It is all centered. There's nothing hanging off of one end or the other, but this rocket likes to tip over, but not drastically, just efficiently. Like, look at this launch angle. I couldn't have even planned this myself, but every single one of the Thunderbolt 2s just likes to take this little flight path. And it's not always to the east, sometimes it's to the south, sometimes it's to the north. So, kind of weird, but not bad. Take a quick second and check on our flight stats. Right before we transfer to the final stage, the 11 times Baby Sergeant, we only have an apoapsis of around 150 some odd kilometers, but then the Baby Sergeant's what pushes it forward. However, on this launch, it just decides to flip around completely, and we do lose a little bit of speed every time it turned backwards. It was pointing retrograde, but we still managed to get some height and distance out of it. And now, as you can see, the advanced biological capsule doesn't actually collect any science until it hits the Kármán line in space. And we had just finished our basic biological capsule, so we no longer have any space science for that. All we have left is atmospheric. So both science experiments are completed in one aspect of our launch, so therefore we could take them off for that aspect of the launch, but they're not completed in the other aspects, so we're just going to keep them both as is. Go and stage the fairing decoupler so that way our parachute is able to deploy when it needs to. Also, some continuity. When I last left the last episode, which is the restarting the program episode, it was December of 1956, and it is currently October of 1957. So what had we been doing this whole time? Well, the entirety of it is we created the rockets, and then we tested them. That didn't take very much time at all, but it was actually the completion of both launch complexes. That was the time saver. See, as we now see, we have even less science than the previous. There are diminishing returns, but it's enough to make us want to look at our research. And now I am discovering that I may be addicted to solid rocket boosters because I want to unlock these so badly. These are for 1959's solid rocket booster testing, so it's way advanced for what we need to do, but But rather than that, I go ahead down to the satellite era science, because we're going to need one of those science experiments for an orbital contract. So I want to make sure that I can have it in the queue ready to go. So that way when we do end up focusing on those parts of the orbital contracts, they're already ready to go and we're not having to scramble to get them. So we're just going to go ahead and warp to completion of our next 2 Thunderbolts. And then when they're ready, we will put them on the launch pad. I was able to use all of my engineers, minus a few. Some of them are sitting around doing nothing. But I was able to transfer over all the engineers from the Goldwing launch complex into the Thunderbolt 2s. And then as soon as the Thunderbolt program is done, they will be going back to the Goldwing launch complex to start our orbital rocket. So here we go. I'm going to have both of them roll out at the same time because might as well save ourselves some time if we can. It's the 11th of December. Here's our 3rd launch. Just a pretty standard launch at this point. I mean, not too much to discuss. Solid rocket booster fires. No failures. Everything is performing as well as it should. Once again, we're pitching down south a little bit. One thing I love about the SRBs, and I mentioned this in the last episode, but in case the video was too long, the best part about SRBs is that they take very little time to put together. They add very little bit of construction time as opposed to a liquid fuel engine. And the launch complexes don't need to be changed when the SRBs are changed out. The different fuel types are taken into consideration in the fact that the SRB is kind of a packaged unit, so the launch complex doesn't need to be prepared to handle a different fuel type. So you can switch out SRBs all day and night as long as they don't go over the weight limit or the height or width limit of your launch complex. So now you see our science is split, so now one is running while the other one is finished, and vice versa. This time we're landing over the grasslands. It'll be nice, as long as we come down soft enough that we don't destroy our capsules. And when it touches down, it destroys both the boat tail and the avionics of this. So I can't actually recover the vessel normally, so I'm going to have to go into the space center, or the tracking center, to go ahead and grab it. But thankfully, it didn't destroy the biological capsule, or the advanced biological capsule, rather. So we're still going to be able to get all that science. I have this little glitch where it doesn't let me delete or recover the item, so I had to click out and click back in a couple times, and then it was able to let me delete it. So if you have that problem, I just recommend clicking a different vessel, and that should fix it. Alright, so here we are. We don't need to wait for the reconditioning of the next launch pad because we already have the Thunderbolt 2 heading out to its own launch pad. And once again on the 11th of December, just mere hours after that last launch, we are ready to launch our final sounding rocket of the year and of the Thunderbolt program. The diminishing science returns have been a little bit discouraging, but we were able to snag enough science to continue our programs and unlock the next few things that we need to unlock to keep going. And that was the whole goal of this short little stint of the Thunderbolt 2. And this rocket seems to be heading east. In the coming episodes, we are going to be working on going orbital, as I mentioned before, but we are also possibly going to pick up some X-plane science as well to kind of bolster our science gains, because we started to hit a wall a little bit at the end of the previous episode. We started getting to a point where we didn't have anything, our scientists weren't really working on anything, because they had unlocked everything that they were able to unlock. And so we need to make sure that they don't sit around doing nothing, getting paid for playing tic-tac-toe, or whatever those scientists did. And with that, our baby sergeants ignite, and they do slightly tilt down, which is not great. It's reminding of the second launch that we had. However, it does not tip down far enough to where we are pointing downwards, so we don't lose any of the height that we needed. All we did was gain a little bit of distance, so that's not bad. I have yet to mention, I keep mentioning that they're advanced biological capsules and basic biological capsules and whatnot, but put simply, there's a dog and a rat in this right now, and I'm sure they are not the happiest that they're spinning in 0 Gs, but it's okay, we'll be getting them out of that soon enough. So we're just gonna follow this down until it splashes down in the Atlantic Ocean. And then we stage the fairings. And we get to see them come back down through the atmosphere, floating on the wind currents. Safely, though. I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody who has been watching this far and everybody who has subscribed and liked and commented. I really appreciate it. I try to answer as many of your comments as possible, and every time I see a new subscriber, I'm very thankful, and it really means a lot. It helps out the channel a lot. I know I'm not very big. I'm not a very big YouTuber for Kerbal and everything, but I do really enjoy bringing you this content and showing you different sides of this game that I just love so much. So just a quick shout out to all y'all. So thank you. So back at the KSC, we go ahead and look at the final report of our final launch. which will be actually the last sounding rocket that we complete for a very long time, if possibly ever. We are now going to be working on bigger and grander things, more difficult projects, all sorts of things. So we can go ahead and dismantle both of the Thunder pads and get those engineers working on something else instead. But first, or finally, I should say, lastly, we're going to go ahead and come in here and complete our programs. We pushed it 1 year past the deadline before grabbing the next new set of programs, so that way we could still get a little bit of funding for the Thunder pads and for the Thunderbolts. We needed to have some sort of income. And as you saw in the graph, you still get paid even after you pass the deadline, just not as much. And so we decided to take advantage of that and utilize that time. But now what we're doing is we are accepting the Light Early Satellite program, and we are going to be working on that soon. I'm very excited for that. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more RP-1. If you did, please consider giving me a like, drop me a comment, let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.